my Scrappy friends. Welcome to the Crafty Maven Getaway podcast. This is your host, Hannah. And today we are on episode 19. We are still doing our creative identity series. I think we have about 3 or so more episodes left. And I am super excited. Today we are going to delve into talking about when you start feeling like maybe you're in a creative rut, let's play, right? How do we play and not lose ourselves? And how do we not get in a rut and play, right? So we're kind of we're talking about two different elements in this episode, but we're really just laying the groundwork for the rest of the series that's going to end it, because so I have been intermixing myself by myself and doing like actual Scrappy chats with other wonderful ladies in our community who know who they are and are a joy to watch and listen to and see them create. And so we're going to have more of that, but I also want to make sure we don't forget these foundational things, because sometimes I feel like as we get talking, it's really easy to kind of lose track of what are we actually talking about, because we are doing Scrappy chats and I want it to be on the fly and I want it to be organic with a little bit of groundwork. So that's why I've been interspersing some stuff. So today we're kind of meshing two different concepts, this concept of playing and the concept of being in a rut, and how do we not stay there. And honestly, the answer is playing helps you not get in a rut, but sometimes playing can lead to you going too far. So how do you not go too far? How do you give yourself permission to play and grow? And how does that process look? And so as we're talking through this, I think I'm going to give you guys some questions, some things to ruminate and really think about, so that when we go and we talk to these other ladies and other creators and scrapbookers and memory keepers, we kind of have that stuff in the back of our head, because if we don't, I think sometimes it's easy to lose track. So anyway, let's get going. Let's do this. So I'm going to try really hard to stay on track today. I can feel my brain. I've been working hard all day, doing some chores and other things and doing business stuff. And so it's a super fun day, but I can feel, so, let's talk, let's be on. So part of this series is I really want you guys to be honest with yourselves about who you are. And no matter where you are in this journey of figuring out who you are as a person and as a creator, will kind of help guide you, right? So I don't want you to think that it's always going to be complicated. And like I talked about last week about really coming to the table and loving what you're doing, that's part of it, right? And so that element needs to be there no matter what, right? We need to love what we're doing, but we also need to have this desire to maybe grow. And I know me and Kathy talked a little bit about that, about not staying still. So how do we do that? How do we not get in a rut? Well, number one, I'm just going to be honest with you. Everyone who creates is going to get into some kind of small rut. The question is, are you going to make this a big boulder, or are you going to go with it and let that rut be like a little pebble? And so I think that as we get talking with other crafters and we really delve into that, I think we'll be able to kind of pinpoint how to do that, how to not make it a big boulder and how to make it a pebble. But one of the first questions is, and this is for you. It's that my answer is not going to be the same for you, but what does it feel like to actually be in a rut? And what is the difference between a rut and a burnout? Because those are two completely different things, but I think ultimately they kind of start in the same place. It starts with the same warning flags and the same like little things that just don't seem right. So how do we know the difference? And I know Megan and I kind of talked about this, and I think we're going to talk more and more about this. We have at least one guest that we're going to talk a lot about this, but I'm hoping that we can get a couple of different people, because this is really a topic that I want to end with, because it is such an easy thing to go from a rut to burnout. But there is a difference, and sometimes being in a rut can seem like you're about to be in a burnout because you're not looking at it in the right way. You're not asking the right questions. And so for you, what does a rut feel like? What does it feel like emotionally, creatively, physically? What is going on in your creative journey brain that makes you feel like I'm in a rut? And sometimes it's doing the same things over and over and over again. When we don't have enough differences in how we're coming to our table, how we're coming as ourselves, it is easy to get into a rut. We just get comfortable. And there's a difference between loving something that we have to do that because we love it and it fills us with joy. There's a difference between that and being like feeling like, oh, well, I have to do it this way. And so I want you to think about, like, what are the times that you felt like I just have to do it this way versus what are the times that like I love to do it this way, but I'm adding different things to this scenario, if that makes sense. I feel like I'm not making sense, and that's okay. There's a difference between being in a rut and being in burnout, right? And there is a difference between loving what you're doing, so you always want to do something similar. And the difference is that what you're getting out of it, honestly. So when we are just doing something because we feel like we have to do it, or that's all that we think we know, we can just easily get into a rut. But when it's something like, oh, I know who I am and I know I love to play with this, or I know I love to do this kind of thing, but we change it up. And I feel like that's the difference. So like, if you're just doing things because you feel like that's what you should do, or it's easier to do it that way, as opposed to doing something because you love it, right? There is a big difference. And so figuring out what that difference looks like for you is important. And a lot of it is thinking about who are we, what season are we in? Because I think that also makes a difference too. Like if we come to the table and we are just physically tired and we're just trying to make the time work, that's when you have to go, okay, how am I forcing myself to come to this table? And so the difference is so little, right? It's so little. So, and it's different for each person. And this is why it is so important in this series that we're talking with lots of different people, because everybody comes to the table differently and everybody approaches it differently and everybody feels differently about themselves. And so as you are coming to the table, if you're feeling exhausted, what are the things that you're doing ahead of time to not feel that way, right? And sometimes it's just coming in and soaking up your room. So sometimes I'm so tired. I just know creatively I'm not going to get a lot done. So I will just come and I'll just give myself permission to just do one thing or to just play with one element. And I don't put the pressure on myself. So I think some of the rut is not putting pressure on ourselves, because if we put so much pressure on ourselves, then that rut becomes more and it becomes a snowball, when really it's just a little pebble. It's just a little moment for us to switch gears, right? So a rut, honestly, guys, a rut is really as just that warning flag that we need to switch gears. And so, like I said, there is a difference between absolutely loving something that's what you do every single time, and how you know you're not in a rut is that you love it, right? And it doesn't bother you to do that same thing. So I want you to think about it that way. Like, it's okay to keep doing the same thing if that's what brings you joy, but also know that growing is part of it. And so let's kind of talk a little bit about this. And we can kind of come back to burnouts and ruts later, because we're going to talk about this with a couple of different people, hopefully. So I want you to also think about, how can I change my mindset when I come to the table and I feel like maybe some things are off, right? And so some of it is going, are the things that are off, are they outside of the craft room? So are they life things? Because honestly, guys, this is for me, that's a big trigger. If outside of my craft room is a mess, it is really hard to come here and put something together that looks pretty, because everything is a mess. So in that case, that's when I go, oh, I need to pull out this art journal. I need to pull out just a blank piece of paper, right? I just need a blank piece of paper and I just play, right? So I'm showing you guys these things because I want you to know that it's okay to just play. So this is what we're talking about, okay? So sometimes there are different seasons in our life, or different moments where we need something different. And how do you figure that out? How do you know? Like, so, and sometimes it's that I come and my desk is a mess. Like, it actually looks pretty clean right now, right? Is it inviting? Is my space so overwhelming that I can't think? Or is it that it's just so clean? There's no products for me to look out at. So one of the things I absolutely love is that I can't even do this, that I put up this pegboard. I still got to finish it, guys. But anyway, I love it because I can look and see, oh, I have these things in my store and I have these things that are in my room that I can see and I can play with. So sometimes it's figuring out, like, is it the environment in your craft space? I know just this past week or a couple of days ago, Sandy was talking about her desk and where people have it in their room, and honestly, it was an inspiring conversation because a whole bunch of us just came in and we were all talking about where we had our spaces that we create and what kind of space would we like. And so sometimes it's switching things up. Sometimes it's organizing and looking and seeing, what products do you have? One of the most amazing things about leaving and coming back for me was going through my stuff and realizing, oh my gosh, I have so many collections that I absolutely love, and I fell in love with them. And so sometimes it's getting to know our products. Sometimes it's going through and getting rid of the products that don't spark the joy, that they just don't hit the mark, and that's okay to have those moments, right? It just means that we have to pivot, right? As they say on Friends, as Ross said, pivot, 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 right? So sometimes we have to pivot. And sometimes that rut, that feeling of the beginning of a rut just means that we have to pivot. So how do we do that? How do we grow and not let the rut become a boulder, right? And so sometimes we also have to know that growth can look different in different seasons in our life. And growth doesn't always look like growth at the beginning, right? So I'm going to say this. I love mixed media. You guys know this, right? When you are starting a page, I'm going to show you part of a page, okay? So when I'm starting this page, it looks like a stinking hot mess, right? It looks like a mess. It's nothing, right? But if you look on this side where I did similar things, but I kept adding. So sometimes it's as you play, as you're adding things to your journey, as you're learning, more and more elements will get added to this process, added to your style, added to who you are, added, enriching your experience. And those things look different in different seasons. And it can look kind of messy, right? Before it turns beautiful. And so, one, don't be afraid of the mess. And embrace it and learn to pivot, right? I'm just going to say this 50 billion times because it just sounds so fun. That's what my brain's latching on to, you guys. So one of the things is are you doing elements that you don't love? I don't like the smushing technique. I've tried it multiple times. I really just don't like the way that it looks for me, because it doesn't turn it. I can't control it enough, which is interesting because we all know mixed media doesn't, you don't control it. But for whatever reason, I get it in my head that like I need it to be a certain way because it looks so beautiful when other people do it. And so if I kept doing that, right, maybe I would learn. Maybe if every day I just did the smushing technique, maybe I'd figure out a way for it to work for me. But maybe I wouldn't, right? So this is where learning and knowing who you are is figuring out, when do I let go of these things that I'm learning, these techniques that I'm trying. There's a way of doing things. And I think it's just practice. As you get going, you'll realize like, oh, I just don't love this. Why am I trying so hard? Or I really want to master it. So I'm going to keep trying because it doesn't look that great right now. One of the best advices I can give to anybody, especially who's doing mixed media or doing something new, is it takes a while. So here's another thing. I decided to go to the Scrapbook and Cards Expo in the next town over that I live. And, they have classes. So I'm going to take a class this year. I've been trying to take tons of classes, whether or not I'm able to do them all at one time when I buy them, whatever. But so in-person classes are super fun because there's people who know what they're doing and they're teaching you, right? And so one of the things that I did for this class, I took a blending class. And it was a card class. I don't really do cards. If you've watched my channel, I don't really do cards. I've done some. And there's some that I absolutely love. And one that I haven't given away because I love it so much. But the only way I'm going to get better at cards or certain elements on a card is to practice, right? And so this is something I know about myself. I don't do well when I can't do it. If it doesn't come easy to me, which is interesting because that's not how life is, right? So sometimes it's figuring out how much you're willing to push into things and when you're not. But all of this, so I'm taking this class. It's all about blending. I don't do a lot of card blending. I have like a really old Tim Holtz blending thing for the blending, the sponges and the foam. Actually, no, it's felt. So I have the felt ones left. I don't even think I have any of the foam ones left. But there's all these cool products to blend better. but it's just not something I do very often. So I'm learning and I'm like doing so bad, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm doing so bad. But then I had to remind myself, like, Hannah, you don't do this. You don't know how to do it. So instead of going, just being okay with that it looks like crap, because I could be okay with that. Like, I'm okay with that. I can find something to cover it up when I get home, and then I can give out this card. Instead, I said, I like have to let go of that pride, self-pride, or I don't even know, like, so not being self-conscious about asking for help. And I'm like, hey, like, this is not looking the way I think it should look. Like, what do I need to do that I'm not doing? And she's like, oh, you need to start off the page and then go on to it. Which is not something that like even remotely came to my mind, right? So sometimes it's about asking questions of other people who know what they're doing, taking classes from people who know what they're doing so that you can learn something. Sometimes it means trying it a few times. And then when you know that you don't like it, pivot. Okay. So, but there is a process, right? And sometimes it looks messy before it looks beautiful. Also, gesso cleans a whole lot of things. even on a regular scrapbook page, guys. If you mess it up and you add something that you don't like, or that pattern's really busy, use a little gesso. A little gesso does a ton of amazing things. Okay? So, and I don't know how big of a myth this is, but sometimes people say once you find your style, it's just easy. You just keep doing that. But as me and Kathy talked about, part of this thing that we love, part of memory keeping, part of paper crafting is growing, right? Part of life is growing. So if it works outside of scrapbooking, it's probably going to work inside of scrapbooking. So life is not always easy. There's always going to be some kind of hurdle that you have to problem solve. And that really is what this element of our journey is how do we problem solve these things? And really it's just listening to yourself as you get to know yourself, right? So like when you're early on in your scrapbooking or creative journey, or part of the journey of like trying a new technique or trying a new style within paper crafting, it's going to take a little while to kind of learn what that looks like for you, or how that needs to look like for you, right? So I want you to think about, and this was part of our challenge last time, is to pick a layout that we didn't like, we didn't love, okay? But at this time, I want you to think about, what did I learn about myself and about how I come to the table in paper crafting? What did I learn? Like, what can I learn from this? And so sometimes it might be that technique is not one that I would like to keep trying. Or sometimes it's that technique, I just don't know enough about it, so I need to keep learning. Sometimes it's, I don't like how I misrepresented the photo to, like, it was disjointed. So the story and the photo and the layout don't mix, right? So what part of the layout or the project that you didn't you love? Like, so we're going to go back to me. And just know that this is just my experience. This is just what I've learned. So I absolutely love the concept of day in the life, week in the life, one little word. Like, I love that. But look at, guys. Oh, this was one. I thought this was by one little word, because it was one little word. And you know what I did with it? So this is just to tell you guys, okay? So I tried one little word. I absolutely love Allie Edwards and how she puts so much thought into the stories that she wants to tell and providing items to do that, right? I absolutely love it, but I just have a really hard time because I also want to come to the table and just play. I just want to make pretty things and play, right? So I tried it and I didn't like it. I got like 2 months in and then I was done and I was bored. And when I get bored here, I can't do it. I don't know about you guys, and maybe you're different, and maybe the things that bore you are completely different, but I want you to think about what are these things that make you bored in your room, and why are you continuing to do them? Because I think sometimes we feel like we have to do them, which is silly because we're doing it for us. I know Shannon reminded, she does it for her. I know I do it for me. Like, yes, do I love to see my kids look through the albums? Yes. Do I want to make sure I have stories for them that they can see themselves as they grow up? Yes. But ultimately, it's still through my lens. I'm not telling the stories the way that they would tell the stories, right? So it's mine. And so this is what cracks me up, and it just really tells the story of, I had this album, I was doing One Little Word, I did not get joy out of it, so you know what I did instead? I made December Daily in it, because I love Christmas. Now, I still have a hard time with December Daily, because I have a hard time finishing it, and like you can see this, because I have stuff in here on the way done. I don't even know how far along this one I got. I do have some stuff. Let's see. 10. See? Actually, these ones aren't even done. It just has the pictures in them. Right? So I just have the pictures. And even this year. So this past year, when I really started consistently scrapbooking, I started off with December because I know I love December Daily. I know I love the holidays. And so what better project to do is to do holiday stuff. And that really sparked my creativity, and it really got me wanting to do all these other things here. So what didn't you like about it? Okay. What was it when you're doing a technique? Was it awkward and you didn't? So what didn't you like about it? Was it that you just need to learn it? And I know I mentioned this before, or is it that you just don't like it? So I've tried the smooshing. I'm going to talk about the smooshing technique because I've tried it many times. I just don't like the way it looks, but I keep trying. And I don't think it's because I've not mastered it. It's like a technique that doesn't take a lot of thought, and which is why a lot of people like it. It's not complicated enough for me, which comes back to like my personality. If something's not complicated enough or it doesn't stimulate my brain enough, sometimes I have a hard time doing it. Right? I need to be stimulated. I need it to be a little bit difficult. That's how I learn. But that might not be how you learn. And you might come to this craft room because you want it to be simple. You want it to be easy. You want those things. So what are the things that you want out of when you come in your room, when you come to create? Like, what are the things that you want? And that's what I want you to think about. This is why knowing your reason why is so important. So I'm going back to, don't forget to know your reason why, because that's going to help you. Like, what do you want to accomplish when you get here? What do you want to accomplish as a creator? And are you doing those things? Like, are you actively trying to do those things? And just know that stepping outside of your comfort zone is going to lead to creative growth. It really is. Every single time that you have to figure it out and you have to pivot and you really have to think through things, you're going to learn something. And sometimes it's that this doesn't work for me. And sometimes it's going, right now in this season, I'm better off doing this. Or today, I'm better off just playing with supplies or organizing because I'm just not in the right headspace. Sometimes it's like, I just really need to touch the paper. I just need to smell the stickers, right? And this is where the power of just coming to your table and just letting loose also is so important. Okay, so within this, we also need to allow and give ourselves grace so that we can come to the table of our scrap table and just play. Right? And sometimes that's doing challenges. Sometimes that's coming in with a sketch. Sometimes that's coming in with an empty page, and just the challenge is what techniques, what products am I going to use? And just playing, like just allowing for that. And I know that we can't all do that in the same way. So how does that look for you? How does playing without rules look for you? Because you knowing that for you is going to be beneficial, because how it looks for me is not going to be the same. It just isn't. Me playing is not the same as you playing. You playing might be finishing a layout start to finish. You playing might be like setting things up a certain way so that you can, once you get to those pockets, you can just fill those pockets up. I don't know. And only you know, and only you can figure this out, right? I want you to think about why so I want you to think about when you're at your table, when you come into your room, why is it so important for me to be able to pivot when I'm in a rut? So I want you to think about, how do I find the joy in those situations? And I just want you to think about other times that's worked, right? So other times that I felt overwhelmed by coming in my room, what was the problem? Because sometimes it's a continuous problem and we're just not fixing it. And sometimes it's a problem of we haven't let ourselves just play enough. Sometimes it's we haven't bought anything new in a while, and that's part of the problem. So here's your permission to buy something. So I went to the scrapbook, once again, I went to the scrapbook and cards expo, right? And so I went going, I'm not going to buy really anything. I'm just there to connect. If I buy a couple of things, it'll be for the shop. And wouldn't you know, I've seen some other really pretty things and I bought stuff for myself. But I realized when I was there looking at stuff, like, I haven't bought myself stuff, like stuff for me. I bought stuff for the store, and that's super fun. Don't get me wrong. It's super fun getting stuff for other people that I know they're going to enjoy and buy. But sometimes it's important. So, and this has also happened, and sometimes it was important for me to get a kit. I used to get Project Life kits from Citrus Twist. And part of it was knowing, like, every month I'm going to have something new. And that just brought me joy. And I needed that. I needed something to help motivate me, right? So figuring out, like, what did you do in other scenarios when you were having a hard time? I also want you to think about why it matters if you like to pay a project that you did or not. Does it matter? And why? Okay. And I know this is a tough question, right? I think sometimes we get so hard on ourselves that it doesn't look like fill in the blank to your favorite scrapbook designer. Sometimes we get so hard on ourselves that it doesn't look like the layouts on the magazine, or I don't know, we didn't have the right embellishments that we wanted to put on the page. All these elements, like, why does it matter that we didn't like something? And if it's because we didn't enjoy the process, that's a different story than, oh, I just didn't care for that. So and I say this because there are some times when I've created things for design teams where I was like, I'm not really sure how I feel about that. Right? And I take the pictures and I post it and I share it. And as other people are enjoying it and they're like, oh my gosh, I love this, I realize that I was just being overcritical about myself. So how critical are you of your own stuff? If the whole point is to come to your table and enjoy this time creating, does it really matter if you're not absolutely in love with it? And the answer might be yes. And then then it goes back to that question, like, why? What can I learn from it so I can not do that again? Or I can do something else that is also going to help me enjoy it. Or is it just that I am being super critical? Because being super critical of ourselves can be a double-edged sword, right? We can not care enough, right? And about certain things. And I think about, like, when I first started scrapbooking and I was just sharing everything, and I see this a lot when I see newer scrapbookers or people who are just doing it for fun. And they're not on teams or whatever, right? And they love their work so much, they just share it. And, you know, the photo doesn't look that great, or around their desk is messy. I've seen that too. Like, you know, creators, sometimes they'll be like, oh, my desk is such a mess. It's like, here's the thing. When you love something, you just want to share it. And it doesn't matter what the picture looks like. It doesn't matter if it's crazy around your desk. Those things don't matter. So sometimes we can be overcritical of ourselves or overcritical of other people, right? So we have to, like, be checking ourselves. Like, you have to not put pressure on other people who they've not put that pressure on themselves. Because at the end of the day, are you enjoying what you're, like, is that sucking the life out of your work? So maybe part of the criticism that you're giving yourself or other people, and sometimes I have to remind myself of that. And I've been hit over the head of, like, why am I so critical of somebody else's work when they loved it? You know? Because we all have things that are unique about ourselves and about our work, right? And we're all telling a different story. We're all at a different journey. So it doesn't matter how anybody else has done something. It only matters about you. But you can be overcritical of yourselves, right? So I want you to think about that too. Like, how do I become less critical of myself so I'm just allowing myself to have fun? And I think sometimes that goes along with not giving ourselves permission, because we have to have it perfect so bad. And it's like, why do we have to have it that way? So I want you to think about these things, because I think that these elements can add resentment. And I think that's what leads to burnout, is all these resentments that we hold against ourselves and maybe other people as well, you know. So one of the things that I want you to think about within the playing aspect is allowing yourself to not be limited by a style or a project type just because you don't do it often. Okay, I also want you to have that what if mentality. Like, what if I did this instead of that, or, I changed it up, right? So once again, it's that pivot mentality. Like, how do I pivot from here? How do I just do things a little bit different? And that shows that you're growing, right? That you can do those things. And that's what I mean by not just it being in a rut doesn't necessarily mean that you're just doing the same things over and over, though there can be elements of that. But it's like, are you allowing yourself to pivot and give yourself grace in that aspect? So in the next few episodes, we're going to go deeper into these topics with other people, and how does this look for other people? And we're going to talk more and more about it. We're going to talk more about burnout and putting guideposts on ourselves, guidelines on ourselves, and pressure on ourselves. How do we not do that? We're also going to talk about pivoting within how we're doing things. We're also going to talk about more about playing. I really want to get into this aspect of how do we just play? How do we just let ourselves play? And what does that look like for you? So we kind of talked, I gave you guys some questions to think about. In the show notes, I'll make sure that I have the questions that I've asked, and maybe questions that I didn't necessarily talk about, and some different things that you can do within that to just challenge yourself to play and all that kind of stuff. But I really want you to think about how can I pivot when something feels off when I'm at my desk. So I want you to think about that, like this aspect of pivoting. But I also want you to remind yourself to give yourself grace. And I want you to also come to your desk with an attitude of gratitude. Okay. So we have this great opportunity that we have stuff that we can play with. We have maybe time that we can play. And so I want you to come with that thought process too. Like, how can I be more grateful as I'm doing this? Because if we are just scrapping to fill our cup and we're not doing it to grow, to learn, to be like, to see the things that we're grateful for, if we're not looking at those elements also, it just, the balance isn't there. And so we need to have this balance of, like I said, not being overcritical, but also thinking things through and knowing our reasons why, and knowing and doing the things that we love, and not just rejecting things because we care about what other people think. So I want you to think about things that you have avoided to do, to play, to do, to let yourself go, because of whatever preconceived ideas, seasons that you're in. I want you to, this week, really take a look at that layout that you picked that you didn't like, okay? And I want you to say, what can I learn about myself from this layout, and what can I learn about what I didn't like about it? Like, what can I learn from this? How can I grow? And then I want you to list out some things that you could do that could fix that. So I want you to just practice this pivoting scenario. I want you to practice this growth. And just remember that different seasons in our life look different. And sometimes it looks messy and sometimes it looks clean. Sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's not. And it's not whether or not you're growing or not. It, like, the messiness or the cleanness doesn't show whether you're growing or not. It just is what it is in the season. And remember who you are outside of the table, so that when you come to the table, you can use those elements to help you while you're at the table, because you're the same person, right? It might be that it shows differently when you're at the table. And so I want you to think about those things. And so hopefully this has helped you just kind of like dig a little bit deeper in who you are and how you can grow and more in who you are, and how that allowing yourself to have permission to just play and grow, like what has that done for your journey, and what could that do for your journey? So I want you to think about all those things. And then next week we'll be back with episode 20. So don't forget to hit the notification bell if you're on YouTube. But also know that you can listen to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. So if you're listening there, yay, you found us here. And if you thumbs up and you comment, give a review if this is on one of the podcast sites, that is also helpful. That helps get these episodes out to other people who are also in their creative journey, and maybe they're looking at questions they're not sure. And so I would love to be able to inspire more and more people to just kind of dig in. Let's keep digging in so we can really like get the most out of our time. Because, you know, we love this, and I want you to just continue to be in love with it. So I will see you guys next week, and I hope you have a great Scrappy week. I can't wait to see and hear what you guys are learning throughout the series. And if you're watching YouTube or listening on YouTube, if you can put down in below like something you've learned about yourself throughout the series, that would be awesome. And I can't wait to see you guys next week. Bye.